The year 1822, somewhere in the English Empire. The steam core, a steam-driven groundbreaking technology, is invented and changing the world, while also separating the official Frostpunk timeline from our own. But the joy of the new technology is short-lived. While the first steam cores are being produced, a mysterious environmental catastrophe occurs. Falling temperatures, freezing harvests, and a never-ending snowfall causes panic in the Empire. Several expeditions were sent north to investigate the weather phenomenon, but came back without any clear evidence. When the weather became worse, while no improvement was in sight, the government came up with two desperate ideas to save the crumbling empires and its inhabitants. First, a large-scale rescue operation to evacuate people to the warmer colonies near the equator. Or, secondly, send icebreakers and purpose-built land dreadnoughts with refugees to the resource-rich northern regions where the British scientific expedition had built giant coal-driven sanctuaries. For the second option, the construction of the so-called generators began 1868 and were built in the coal-rich north to provide the last refuge from the cold. These generators were completed at great expense, sacrificing under enormous time pressure in order to be ready for operation before the eternal frost reaches its peak and there is no more empire left. As the warmer colonies in the south were well less equipped against the cold than the north, anarchy quickly broke out and the connection to the rest of the empire was finally cut. With this option off the table, only the generator idea remained as a last hope. As London and the last cities on Earth slowly collapsed under the ever-worsening weather, various groups of refugees made their way up north with the help of the dreadnoughts. In the end, while the empire finally collapsed under the weather and the national bankruptcy, the first two cities were built about the generators in the north, Winterholm and Tesla City. Neither city was destined for a good fate. Winterholm, a city rich in resources and technology, descended into chaos following the news of the fall of the capital. When food shortages and the rule of a strict army captain came into play, the inhabitants revolted. Some of the peoples were able to flee, others were rescued before the generator finally exploded. An even darker fate befall the inhabitants of Tesla City, the second largest settlement of people in the area. When scouts reach it, there's an eerie silence in the city, collapsed, and charred corpses pave the streets. The records show that this was the city under the leadership of Nikola Tesla, who led the American expedition. Tesla seemed to have risen to become some kind of tech dictator who ruled with a firm hand, building up a hugely advanced small town. The erection of an electric shield against the snow eventually led to a disaster that wiped out the entire site. No one will ever know what happened truly here, no survivors are left to tell. Only the third major town in the area would see a brighter possible future, New London. A small settlement built around a generator stationed in a large crater giving shelter. 80 souls and a captain to lead them, without any food, resources, only in desperate hope for a future. Together they built a first camp, later a larger town. Sacrifices had to be made to build a small society. But just as they have made their colony self-sufficient, the news of Winterholm's fate reaches them. Panic breaks out. The fear of suffering the same fate as the larger town before is omnipresent. A group of the townspeople decided to make their murderous journey back to London, the old capital. They will take the name Londoners for their movement. Even though their mission threatens to end certain death, they convinced more and more inhabitants to join their mission. With strict order and a return to a new founded faith, the captain finally manages to convince the people to stay, even if society only narrowly avoids becoming a dictatorship in the process due to these drastic measures. After the group of Londoners are largely dissuaded from their plans, an even greater challenge awaits the young city. The engineers are forecasting a huge storm, an apocalyptic event that will sweep across the Frostlands, bigger and harsher than everything they have seen before. The Great Storm becomes the final test. Preparations have to be made, supplies stored for weeks, and constantly heat supply ensured. After all preparations necessary were made, the apocalypse finally arrives and unleash hell above everyone. Silence. The storm has passed and New London has survived. Temperatures are rising to previous levels. The city can continue. As ambition grows, outposts are established in the surrounding Frostlands, mines to bring raw materials to the ever-growing city. An old warehouse serves as an outpost for further supply of valuable steam cores and metal. New routes are built to set up trading and contact with other settlements and outposts in the Frostland. But as always, there are setbacks. Shortages of resource and disease repeatedly set the capital back, and only by joining forces can the outposts support and save their hometown from falling. Survival remains a critical challenge for everyone, and over the years deadly whiteouts occurred again and again. Weather phenomena similar to the Great Storm which destroyed large parts of the exploration efforts. 30 years later, New London is bigger than ever. Hundreds of inhabitants have become thousands. The population has also diversified. The original townspeople, the New Londoners, have been joined by the faction of the Frostlanders, residents of the colonies and rescued settlers like survivors of other settlements. Further factions include the remnants of the Old Order, the Stalwarts, and also the Faithkeeper, factions left from the Captain's rule. They all strive for more say and influence in the growing metropolis in the everlasting ice. With ambition, they are not alone in the area, as two other factions, the Evolvers and the Pilgrims, want to bring the city to a more nature-driven direction. Embracing the frost and adapting to it instead of building machinery to conquer it like their opposing political opponents want. The city itself is in the middle of a great change and turmoil. The old captain who led through the Great Storm is now dead. A new administrator, the Steward, has been appointed and is setting up the first parliament. The people will get a say in the direction of the city, and the Steward commit to help them guide the process. But the cold is restless and remains the biggest problem for the time being. The city's coal reserves are exhausted and the surrounding area no longer holds much of this vital resource. A new source of energy must be found. After exploring the wider Frostland with better and bigger expeditions, they finally find some liquid gold. An old Imperial dreadnought lies within a sea of oil in the near reach. But what starts as a miracle turns into a heated debate quickly when the first charge of the resource arrives in the city. What is the future we should build now? Settling around the land again and adapting to the new world, or building a giant metropolis that outstands the harsh condition and becomes the new capital of a frozen empire? As the debate is heating up, another whiteout hits the city. These destructive storms can take almost a year and devastate the economy as well as the stockpiles that ensure the existence of the entire population. After the storm finally passes, it becomes silent for a moment when the people realize they need to reach beyond the borders to ensure their survival for the following years with more whiteouts. After setting up a smaller settlement for immediate resource supply, they decided to send a mission back where they have reached first: Winterhome. Now a cursed city as its toxic wasteland after the generator has exploded, they managed to find the old ruins. Still rich on resource to exploit for further advance the generator, or, as the survivalist factions suggest, creating a whole new city to ensure that, if New London should ever fall, humanity still stand a chance and don't perish together with its hometown. The question about Winterhome's fate let the radicals in the city grow more violently. Secret attacks and the first casualties of the conflict let the tension rise higher and higher. The Stalwarts and Faithkeeper want to blast the old ruins of Winterhome to finally end the chapter of settling beyond and create a new prosperous future. The rivals, the Pilgrims and Evolvers on the other hand, are furious as their brightest hope for a future to start a new era of mankind with migrating beyond the city is on the edge. The civil wars between the radicals boils in the city and the debates in the council gets more and more heated. The Steward tries to repel with diplomacy and force, but the tensions finally explode in a horrifying event. During a council session, one delegate gets stabbed by their opponent and the situation explodes. Civil war is raging on the streets, the time of talking is over, now it's brutal force which is setting the city on fire. In an emergency meeting from the Steward with his most trusted loyalists, all options are now on the table. From prison colonies to exile the radicals, up to declaring martial law and the captain's rule to restore full authority over the city by him. He is told that many people of the city would stand behind him after all he has done for ensuring their survival. But it would turn the whole society from a democracy back to a strict rule by one person in charge. Freedom of choice would have failed in the city and sacrifice for leveling up the Steward to never-seen power levels. Even if it is tempting to resolve the conflict with force, there is still a narrow path for a peace agreement, and the Steward decides to start negotiation to develop a united vision for the city. After negotiations were done, it comes to the final vote in the council for the peace accords. With all his diplomacy and under highest effort, 2/3 of the delegates finally passed the agreement, which is now set to secure the future of the city. For now, the riots have ceased, but peace remains a fragile treasure in the ever-frozen but still growing city. The future will show if the steward and his successors can hold them all together when the season will change again. Thanks for watching, and please consider to like and subscribe if you would like to see more story analysis and Frostpunk content here in the future.